Okay,
Hello.
we are live. Hi, Derek. How you doing?
Hey, Lindsay. We're here. We're live. It's happening.
We are live.
We're
Oh, there's
here.
David. Awesome.
Hey.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And welcome to our live audio room on Facebook. This is my first time ever doing this, so I'm like really excited about it. I've been looking forward to it. And yes, I just also want to let everybody know that we have two amazing guests here, and I'm thrilled to be joined by David Archuleta and Derek Hough. And we're going to be talking today about several subjects from creativity to our artistic process to kind of the path we've all faced going to self-acceptance and our faith journeys. So if you guys happen to be one of the three people on the planet who don't know who David and Derek are, that's a shame, and I'm going to tell you why. So David is a singer-songwriter as well as an actor. At the age of 12, he had a successful journey on Star Search, and his success on American Idol at the age of 16 is what really propelled his recording career, touring, and made him a household name. So welcome, David, first of all.
Thanks,
Woohoo!
Lindsay.
The
It's
crowd goes wild.
no.
And then let's see, we've got Derek, who is also a singer and a musician and an
Whoop, whoop.
actor. But he is best known for his award-winning dancing and choreography. He rose to fame in his long stint on Dancing with the Stars and most recently was a judge on World of Dance. Welcome, my friends, and thank you so much for joining me.
What's up, Lindsay? Thanks for having us. I can't wait to dive into this conversation about all the beautiful things. And congratulations to you, Lindsay, for just crushing it over the years with all your success and just defying the
Yes.
odds and just amazing, amazing things. Currently on tour, and
Defying
I love it.
gravity.
Well, thank you guys. By the way, I just realized this about David. He jumps into song occasionally. So throughout this
Too much.
interview,
Oh my gosh.
if you're lucky, occasionally David will just start singing beautiful ballads, and it's fantastic.
I burst out into
So,
body rolls, but you can't hear those.
Oh, dang.
that's actually very true. After spending quite a bit of time with Derek, you do burst into dance occasionally
He
and
does.
spontaneously. And actually, the first time I met you, Derek, was you grabbed my hand and reeled me in and started dancing with me. And I remember it was at an event, and it was the Tony Robbins event, and we were all supposed to be like, dancing and just being free. And yeah, you grabbed my hand and started like twirling me around, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm dancing with the dancer. I'm dancing with Derek Hough.
Oh my goodness.
So
Well,
funny.
it's amazing. It's amazing to think like from when we first met to, and I remember saying to you, I said like, "Hey, Lindsay, like I would love let's collaborate and do something." And you're like, "Yeah, of course, let's do it." And then literally within weeks, we like I did a video with you, you did a video with me, and ever since like you're just been so gracious with your time and just every time I need like a beautiful violin for something, you always are out there with your violin, showing up to the recording studio, and I can and I love sharing with people like when I do these pieces, and I'm like, yeah, that's Lindsay, and they're like, oh, we know, because that's her sound, that's her, that is her,
Oh,
you know. So it's
So
just
cool.
cool. It's cool to see our journey together and our collaborations and relationship.
Man.
absolutely.
I
I
want to collaborate with y'all now, but I just need to burst out those dance moves like y'all.
Oh,
Oh,
David, it's gonna happen because you've got the voice. I think this group is cool because we all have very different talents. We've got violin, dance, and singing. So,
Boom.
boom,
hey.
the
What
trifecta.
this is a fun group too. I'm excited to be chatting with y'all here.
Absolutely. And I will say I've always been so honored anytime I get to collab with you, Derek, and your multiple Emmy nominations. I was just so proud that I got to be a small piece of, the puzzle on one of them by playing on it, and
Hey.
so
Get it,
cool.
y'all? Get
Pretty
it.
awesome.
Before we kick it off, I just have a quick question for Derek. Okay, why is World of Dance not happening anymore? I'm not gonna lie, I'm so sad.
I know. It's super sad. Well, here there's a couple things. The pandemic, that was a big one because,
Yeah,
obviously with the world shut down, it's almost impossible to get acts from all over the world, in one place.
right.
It's just so difficult. So I guess it could be called like Sherman Oaks of dance or Studio City of Death.
That's a really
But
good point.
yeah, but also I think that there was just a change of regime in the executives over at NBC, and it was just one of those shows that unfortunately just with all the logistics and things happening and how much it costs, and but we'll see if there's a future for it. But as of now, I don't see anything as of now, but I love that show so much, so I really hope it
Ah,
does.
Such a cool show.
it was so good. And, I just speak for many when I say that, like, I was so disappointed when I realized it wasn't coming back. And you were
Yeah.
so fantastic on it. And, you guys brought so much talent in front of the world that, like, normally wouldn't get to be seen. So thank you for that. And I really do hope it
Yes.
comes back.
Me too. We'll see.
Derek, I just had a flashback of when I first met you, because y'all's studio's right across from when I was on season 7 American Idol. We were like
Uh-huh.
studio roommates, because y'all
Yeah.
were in the studio right next, and we'd like be passing each other in the hall every now and then.
Yeah, American Idol and Dancing with the Stars shared the hallway. Yeah, for years.
Hallway.
So yeah, literally.
That's what we just bump
No
into each other every now
way.
and then.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was wild.
That's crazy. So you guys met through reality TV. I love it.
through reality TV.
And
That is
also,
something. Oh, sorry. Go on, Derek.
oh no, I was just gonna say also it's interesting too because obviously our connection as well is Utah.
Yeah.
Is coming from Utah, and I remember, obviously with you, David, I know like people were like, oh, he's from Utah, and whenever there's somebody like on TV or doing something in the entertainment world that's from Utah, it's always like if you're from Utah, you just have this like just automatic sense of pride, like yeah, they're from Utah, all right,
Yeah.
Um,
That's what I meant about y'all too. So be like, oh, hey. We would like have nothing else to say but just be like, hey, like,
Utah,
just,
yeah.
yeah.
Utah. Oh,
It was
that's
fun.
amazing. It's something that ironically we all actually have several things in common as I was thinking about what we would, how this conversation would go. And one of them is that we all got our start in some way on reality TV.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I thought that was really interesting. Mine was
That's
America's Got
true.
Talent. We've got American Idol, and we've got Dancing with the Stars for Derek. And
Hmm.
so I just wanted to see if you guys agreed with me. Can we just talk about the nerves of competition-based reality TV show and the pressure? Like,
Whew.
do you guys have anything to say about that? Because personally, I feel like there has never been anywhere that has made me feel so terrified and so nervous as when you're about ready to go live on one of those shows.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me personally, it was a little bit different for me because I was, quote unquote, the pro
Right.
teaching a non-dancer. And so I feel like,
Ooh.
and this is kind of terrible, but like, early in the early days, you were of course were nervous because you had to be on your toes in case your partner, messed up or they weren't sure what they were gonna do. But there's always this like, thing in the back of your mind or this sort of crutch, if you will, being like, well, if it doesn't go great, then you know there shouldn't be that big of an expectation anyways because they're a non-dancer, you
Right.
know and so
Hmm.
it can take the pressure off a little bit because you're like, hey, things are going to happen. Whereas like I think with you guys, like you were competing and you were doing your work. So I mean,
Right.
what was that like, especially sitting in front of Piers Morgan and Simon Cowell, which are the two most, you know I don't know, like not really warm faces, I suppose.
Right. And they're supposed to be scary. Like the show wants them to be terrifying and wants us to be
Intimidating.
intimidated. Yes, exactly. Um, I just remember also, I was not a seasoned performer, and I'm sure, David, you weren't as well. Like, people have to remember that these people that go reality shows, sorry, I think I cut out for a second. The people that go on to these reality shows are not used to that kind of adrenaline. They're not used to performing like that. So yeah, I just remember that feeling as they're doing the countdown before going live, and they're like, "We're coming back from commercial break in five,
Oh.
four," and the audience like, oh, David, I don't know, you can speak to that. I'm too.
It gives anxiety thinking
Literally.
about it.
What was
Just
that
like,
for you
woo.
like? Because you were 16.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, I had actually been on like competitions before when I was like 12 on Star Search. So I had some of that experience before, but like, man, it just American Idol is so huge. There's so many people watching and they're voting, and there's Simon Cowell and Paula Abdul and Randy Jackson. At least that's who I had on my season. And it was just, I mean, I feel like most of the time I was so out of it. Like I was so just emotionally drained that I
Hmm.
wasn't even there for half of it. I would just be like, huh,
Right.
what just happened? I went on autopilot because I'd rehearsed it so many times. And then it was just like, what just happened? It was just on TV in front of everybody. But
I
it was
think
Yeah.
just,
it's wild too to think like those, when you were on Idol and Dancing and America's Got Talent, like that was in the heyday as well of those shows, in the sense that
Mm.
that was before streaming and everything. So that was when each show was pulling 20 million plus viewers every night.
Right.
right.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
which is wild when you think about it. And of course, now with streaming, it's different, but it's pretty quite crazy to look back at those memories and just think about, just like you just said, how big those shows were, and they're still big, but like they were like juggernauts, back then.
Yes.
For
You
real.
know, and it's kind of crazy to just think about, like I can't even remember how, like David was saying, it's like you black out almost when it starts, because you've practiced so hard and you've prepped so hard, and it's almost like you don't know how to handle that kind of pressure. And I just felt like you go into autopilot kind of. You almost had no choice once that buzzer rang or once the music started.
Hmm.
One thing I always would like, teach my partners before we go live is, and something that I learned too, is that, when we say that we're nervous, being nervous and being excited chemically and physically are identical. There's no
Mm,
difference between nerves and excitement. And the only distinction is the focus, right? Whatever you focus on is what you feel, and also the language you use takes the way you feel. And so I say, listen, my partner would be like, Kelly Pickler would be like, I'm so nervous. I'm so nervous. I'm like, hey, just try this. Just try saying, I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
And I just
just say
can't
it.
hide it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And, yeah. And just say it. And literally just by saying that word, change the focus, because now you're not focusing on messing up or all the bad things. You're excited to show what you've done and what you worked on. And then all of a sudden those
yes.
nerves become excitement, and then you have a little bit more control over that. And that was really, really helpful for me, but also for me to help my partners, on that show. And I still use that. I catch
Yeah.
myself and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. And just go for it.
Oh,
So
I love that. And I think that sometimes the lens through which we view things changes everything. Like you said, just changing the words can totally change your perspective as you prepare. And I think that I probably get asked at like meet and greets and those kind of question answer situations. I get asked about stage performance anxiety and nerves probably more than any other question. And kind of the same way you were saying, you focus on excitement rather than being nervous. I've learned to switch the focus from like, oh my gosh, I hope I do well. I hope they like me. I hope I'm enough, to, because that's kind of coming from a place of lack, like hoping you're enough, hoping that they care, to, I'm so grateful to be here. I get to give a gift today.
Mm.
I get to share something with so many people. And it's the same kind of nerves, the same kind of emotions, but suddenly it's about like giving, and it's about abundance rather than like lack. And it's just kind of helped me change everything. But David, do you get nervous before performances? And is there anything that you do to deal with your nerves?
I love that perspective, by the way. I feel like I'm at a motivational thing right now, hearing y'all speak. But I still get nerves, but I think I've just learned that it's just part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
I do get very self-conscious. I do worry a lot about what other people think of me, probably too much. And even now, even, over a decade later of being in this business and performing, it's I still can't help but worry, like, oh, what are people going to like this? Or is it going to be their money's worth? Are they going to have a good time? Are they going to get something good? But you just work and push through it. I always like to just say a prayer. It kind of just helps me recenter myself and reminds me of my purpose. I'm like, hey, I just am so thankful to
Yeah.
have this moment to just give to people and to just be an instrument to lift people up. And just to kind of like take it out of my hands of worrying and putting it into hands of who gave, God, who gave me that chance to use my gift to pay for it, and then it's
Absolutely.
fun, and then it's just a fun time.
It's I feel like all of us, and I think that's one thing that I think we can all like, say that we have in common, so many people out there. Am I enough? Right? It's that question that was just like
Mm-hmm.
constantly in our minds. Am I enough? Am I good enough? And it's constantly there. And somebody told me this. They just told me this. He looked at me. It was this kind of a weird thing, and he was just like, "Hey, if you were naked in a field by yourself with no possessions, absolutely nothing, you're enough. You're
Mm.
enough. With That's it. Like with nothing, just you by yourself in a field, nothing around you, you're already enough." And just kind of knowing that going into something gives you the energy and gives you the platform to jump off of, and realize as well that we all suffer from that fear, right? Am I enough? And
Yeah.
then it's that realization. It's like, I am, no matter what. I am, no matter what I've done, whatever I do, I'm enough. And going to share from there is it's just you come from a place of wholeness, I feel like.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer in like repetition. It's like when you were learning to dance or, sing or play
Hmm.
the violin, any of these things, you
Hmm.
you repeat and you have repetition of certain exercises or movements or whatever it may be. And yet a lot of times when we think of mental health, we don't think of it in the same terms. And so I've kind of become a big fan
Hmm.
of repetition of whether it's
Hmm.
like vocally saying things like I am enough. And I can't even tell you kind of what I was referring to earlier. How many times every night on stage in the middle of the performance I will say to myself, I'm giving a gift. I'm just here to give a gift. And I usually say that when I start to feel like, oh my gosh, I was out of tune. Oh my gosh, I missed a step. I like, so I don't spiral. I'll do that repetition of before I can spiral, I say, I'm just here to give a gift. I'm enough. I don't have to be perfect. And so I think that's really cool, Derek, of just like repeating over and over again
Yeah.
these phrases.
Well, I mean, like you said, like, repetition is the mother of all skill. Of all
Yes.
skill is the repetition is the mother of it all. And I think that when you, like you said, it's we exercise physically for our physical muscle, but we also have to exercise our emotional muscle or our spiritual muscle. And in order to
Right.
do that, it's intentional practice and feeding your mind, making standing guard at the door of your mind, meaning like, what am I allowing into my mind right now? What am I allowing myself?
Right.
What am I reading? What's on my social feed? What am I looking at on YouTube? What's coming into this, sacred space, which is my mind and my soul. um
Yeah.
and being aware of that, so then you're able to sort of stay in that emotional fitness, if you will.
Emotional fitness I think is so cool to say because not only is it just like, emotional like practice of like ways of thinking and being, but it's also like physically you are creating neural pathways in your mind by that repetition. So it's like not only like a
Hmm.
spiritual, emotional exercise, it's actually, a physical thing that's happening as you think these thoughts in your brain and you are exercising neural pathways.
Hmm.
So I always love it when like science meets spirituality. I think that's always
Yeah.
one of my favorite things. And we hear this whole, we hear the word acceptance a lot. And in terms of, here we are talking about I'm enough. I think acceptance is what we all crave. And, both in our personal and professional lives, what does it mean to you guys, the phrase, acceptance?
Except. Hmm.
Acceptance. I feel like that's something that has evolved for me because it's still, I think it's something that, like I mentioned, it's something that I think I over worry about. It's like, what are people going to think of me? Am I going to, like, I think we worry a lot in our time now. It's like, am I going to offend someone? Is someone going to be
So
bothered
true.
by this? And we get, we get very worried about offending someone and not being accepted. Or, I mean, a lot of times I'm like worried if I'm making someone else not feel accepted by something that's misinterpreted by what I say or how I behave or act. But acceptance, I feel like just, just on basic terms for me, I just think of it's when you feel like you belong somewhere. You have a sense of belonging, and it's almost like you just fit somewhere that you kind of have like a safe space. It's how
Hmm.
I would look at it on simply put.
You know,
Yeah.
for me, I think the word that comes to my mind when I think about acceptance is curiosity. And
Hmm.
the reason why I say curiosity is because, for instance, if you're thinking about others, not just accepting ourselves, but to accept someone else outside of you, perhaps there's somebody who doesn't behave in a way that you like or enjoy, or they say something, or they have a different belief than you, or different perspective, or different politics, or whatever it might be. I think staying curious is so incredibly important, because when you're curious, that means that you're interested in knowing what their story is. Like, what's the story? What's behind that? What motivated them to say that? Where did that come from? Because it comes from a place. It doesn't just come out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
And I
I
think that
like
when
that.
when there's an understanding of that person, then understanding is the first step to acceptance. And I
Mm.
think that,
Yeah.
so if somebody, I look at somebody and they have um, they do something terrible, and so instead of me being judging them and saying, oh, they're so terrible, I hate them, and they're just pathetic and useless and evil, and that's just so simple. And also too, when you judge others, you separate from yourself. When you get into a judging position to judge someone else, and I don't just mean dancing, but when you go into a judgment position, you separate from yourself and you separate from others, and it's all about connecting. And I think that way to being connected is by being curious and
Mm.
understanding people, and then by understanding you accept. And I think that acceptance is just, it's giving into the isness, right, of like right now, this moment, what is. um
Hmm.
and that's incredibly powerful. And by the way, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's all wonderful and great. There's pain, there's trauma, there's really tough things that you go through. um but when you understand those things, you suddenly have a bit of perspective, almost like a bird's eye view, versus like getting where the emotion gets, you're consumed by it and it becomes you. You're able to sort of separate yourself and look at it, and able to handle it, and I think another real fast too, but why I'm on this rant
Hmm.
is responsibility. Because I feel like, um for me, the way I sort of accept myself in many ways, and not just saying like I'm enough, because I know my whole life has been about winning trophies and winning championships and being the best and all these things.
Like no
And if I
one ever was. Sorry.
and if I didn't do those things, I felt like a failure. I felt like a loser. I felt like just useless. And when I realized, like, oh, I don't have in order for me, because I believe that winning equaled love. I believe that trophies
Hmm.
equal love, and I didn't realize, like, oh no, just me as I am is enough to be loved and to love. And that's, for me, is that self acceptance. And when I mentioned about the responsibility, as I mentioned, you know, it's taking full responsibility of my life. Which
Hmm.
basically means that you have the ability to respond to any situation. So when something happens, I'll take responsibility, meaning that, um, something bad happens to me that day. Okay, now I have the ability to respond to the situation and not react to it and not be consumed by it. And there's a sense of acceptance and understanding in that as well.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, you both said so many good things. I want to just like kind of highlight. First, David, I love that you talked about belonging was the word that you felt. And I love Brene Brown. I'll probably refer to her several times as we talk because I just think she's amazing. And she
Mm,
really defined the difference of fitting in is something we all want, but belonging is what we all actually want, because fitting in is you'll almost do anything to change yourself to mold into the people, the situation, the room, whatever it is, you want to fit in. But belonging means that you find people who accept you for who you are. And, that's what we all actually need. And so I thought that was really cool that you used the word belonging, David. Um, and then, Derek, you said so many cool things. And,
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, I wish I was
TED
taking
Talk
notes.
with Derek.
Yeah, literally. But, I remember I was at this conference once and this man came in and he shared stories of individual, just ordinary people. He just like told us about their lives and it had the whole room in tears as we listened to these stories about people we'd never met and who lived in different parts of the world. And the whole point of his lecture was that it's almost impossible to dislike someone or hate someone if you know their story and if you understand them. And that's what you were talking about, Derek, is sometimes if you step back from like we all are so locked in our own perspective of what rules we've built around ourselves to make ourselves feel safe and make ourselves feel like we accept ourselves. And, it's all this big protection to make us feel like everything's okay. And if someone doesn't fit into that, then it's not okay. And we can sometimes often get into judgment and all this stuff. But if you take a step back and try to see where they're coming from, like you said, be curious. It really is kind of impossible not to love someone once you know where they came from and their story and the why behind what they believe. And it's
Yeah.
really powerful.
It's
I
amazing
love that.
the amount of times that I'll run into somebody and my initial reaction is like, man, they are such a jerk, right? And you're just like, oh my gosh, like wow. And then that turns into curiosity, like, I wonder why. And then
Right.
I'll talk to them, and then you realize they're like, oh, interesting. Okay, they're afraid.
Yeah.
They reacted that way because they're fearful that they're not going to do a good enough job, and the way they're handling that fear is through aggression or it's through, whatever they choose to do that day. And when you break that down, you just realize, oh, they're just afraid like I am, And when you realize
Absolutely.
that, you make that connection, and you're like, hey man, I love you. And then there's like this beautiful bond and this beautiful acceptance and understanding. And then, and I think that's the thing too is, you talk about repetition, Lindsay, and I think a beautiful sort of mantra, if you will, I think to start your day is, today I will live in acceptance rather than expectation, because I feel like we have
Mm.
these expectations about the way people should be and how they should live, and expectations of how they should act. I mean, especially, by the way, with family, right?
Yeah.
You'll get a family member and they'll say something and you're like, come on, like you're my, what? Because there's this expectation of the way, they're supposed to support you or be there for you. And instead of being like, you know what, I'm choosing acceptance, and no matter what they say or do, I'm going to see them with love, and I'm going to see them with, who they are, and not by just what they say, but who they are. And yeah, I think yeah, it's a life a game changer.
Absolutely. And there's a lot to be learned when you realize that, like, most of the time, like, life is a mirror. So how you treat people is oftentimes a reflection of how you feel about yourself. And
Hmm.
and so if there is someone that is lashing out and being, instead of taking offense, if you can have that realization that, like, there's more to this story here, like, this person is acting in a way towards me, like, it's all based upon them, like, almost always. And that's how we treat people. It's based upon our own perspective and our own little world. And if you can see people as if they're responding to a mirror, it kind of helps you have that acceptance or understanding of where they're coming from. And um, do you think, though, on that note, do you think that we need to accept ourselves in order to accept others?
I would I would say so. I especially how you were saying like what were you saying, Lindsay, about like the reflection of how we treat others is a reflection of how we
Treat ourselves or how we
yeah.
feel about ourselves. Yeah.
I feel like it's really important. I mean, at least for me, like especially this year, 2021, and just some of the things I've started opening up about with my own journey.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's it was like wow, if I wanted to be more compassionate to other people and understand them, like I definitely needed to learn how to be that way with myself. And so was it Derek that you were talking about, just the fears a lot of times when someone's angry or being a jerk or something, like you when you're curious to see, you see that they're being fearful. And I realized that there are a lot of times I was fearful of myself. I was fearful of my
Mm,
own weaknesses or the things I didn't understand about myself. But because I was afraid of that, I wasn't giving myself a chance to even get to know myself, to get vulnerable with myself. I guess how Brene Brown would say, like the power of being vulnerable.
yeah.
And sometimes like that, it sounds mushy. Like, why would I want to be vulnerable? But allowing yourself to let your guard down, to see yourself, to see why you're afraid, what you're trying to cover up out of shame. And so for me that was um, trying to understand my sexuality and my attractions, and
Hmm.
and because I was so scared and uncomfortable by it. I was like, no, like I can't see this. And it only with time, with year after year of trying to do that and trying to avoid it out of being afraid and uncomfortable with myself and how I felt, it caused a lot of this like subconscious anger and this resentment towards myself, and even hatred, that when
Mm,
I would try to start getting intimate with other people and try to build relationships with other people, I started seeing that anger come out to them. But I didn't recognize it at first as anger and hatred I had for myself that was inside of me, just bubbling out, overflowing. I thought it was something that they were doing. So
right.
like I was like so blinded by my own anger and whatever I wasn't fully conscious of that I was holding down. I thought it was their fault. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
I'm angry. They must have done something to get me angry. But over time and over doing the same habit, doing the same bad habits in relationships, I started seeing the pattern. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're not doing something, because each person is different and the same results are happening. I'm getting angry and feeling this
Mm,
hatred, but it's because I'm holding it to myself, because I haven't given myself that time and that space and compassion to look at myself and
wow.
in a non-judgmental way, and be vulnerable with myself. And I had to be willing to accept myself so
Yeah,
I could
yeah.
Yeah,
just,
that's really
You know,
powerful.
it's interesting. Like, there's a great expression that I love, and I think that it just reminded me of what you were talking about there, David. And it's, I think like whatever you resist persists. It's like there's like this. We feel like we have these. And I guess in your case, you have this feeling of this who you might be and who you are, and there's like this resistance almost to it. But I think that the more we resist, our feelings and our thoughts, and the more it persists, and it will continue to until we turn around, we acknowledge it, we look at it, we observe it, we love it, we nurture it, and we let it, whatever it might be. But unless we sort of acknowledge things, they will continue to persist. And then, unfortunately, as for me personally, in my life, there's been things that I've resisted, and certain things that happened to me as a child, and I would block them out, and I would, shut them down, and I would just be like, I'm strong, I can move through them. But it just kept, I never acknowledged it, I never looked at it, and it just kept persisting in different ways, and they would come out in different ways, in anger and other things. And I'm like, what's happening? What's going on with me? And then by, understanding and working through things, and then turning around and acknowledging this part of me that, has happened to me, and I was able to release it, and then able to whatever it might, whatever that was. And so I think that it's so important, like you said, David, to sort of, give yourself that space, and to see yourself, and to acknowledge yourself, and really to accept yourself, and love it. And I think that growing up in a culture where I feel like, and you said this word too, David, which I thought was powerful, but the shame, because especially with men, that shame is the worst emotion you could possibly have, because guilt is I did something bad, but shame is I am bad. and that's a
Hmm.
very, very different thing. And I think that when we feel like I am bad, I am a bad person, I am whatever, disgusting and dirty and all, whatever the things that come up in our minds, which I know we do a lot. It's really important to recognize that and say, no, I am not bad. I am not this. I am love. I am beauty. I am, I mean, and then go off on this tangent of I ams, of all the things that, are truly you. And sorry, speaking of tangents, I went off on a little
Oh
tangent
man,
there,
dude, have
but
you heard the song "I Am Light" by India Ari?
um,
If
probably.
y'all have it, it is so good. It just when you're going on that with the "I
Ooh.
am," it is so good. She says, "I am light.
Yes, yes.
I'm not the things my family did. I am not the voices in my head. I'm not the pieces of the brokenness inside. I am light." It is.
Oh,
If you
that's
haven't heard it,
beautiful.
you have to check it. It has been such a empowering, healing song for me on my journey just in the last year and a half.
I love
So
that. That's
she's
beautiful.
Check
amazing.
it out.
I
She's
love
incredible.
India.
It's
And
interesting the whole concept of like I am light, and Derek, you both talked about shame. And it's true, shame grows the best when it's in darkness, when we hide it, and that's where it thrives. It thrives when we buy into the belief that I am alone and I'm going to hide this.
Hmm.
And so I'm curious, David, did you feel like a relief when you not only like kind of accepted where you stood with yourself, but also did you find also a secondary relief when you shared this with your family or with other people?
Yeah, it's almost like I was like, is this any good to share? Like this, I'm like, I'm kind of embarrassed to talk about this. And, coming from a religious background and, you know,
Not only a
yeah,
religious background, you're like, I mean, from the time you were 16, you were kind of the poster child of a perfect Mormon,
oh
perfect
my
Mormon young
goodness.
man. And so to go, I mean, I can't imagine the pressure that you must have felt and like all of it. So I'm just really curious, like one, what gave you the courage to be honest and vulnerable like that? But secondly, like how was the experience for you?
Oh man, I know it was so awkward when like people are kind of like, oh, like as the example. I was like, what the heck? I don't even know what I'm doing to that. I'm giving
Yeah.
this impression. And I guess I was held that inside. Like, even when I was a teenager, I wasn't honest with myself about like being attracted to guys. But I knew it in the back of my head. I just didn't want to admit it. I kept trying to like push it down. I thought I was pushing it away, but it was just pushing it down inside.
Yeah.
Um, and so for me, I was like, oh my gosh, why does everyone think I'm so great? If they only knew, if they only
Yeah.
knew. I'm just like too shy to open up to everybody. So they think there's nothing wrong with me. Um, but when I, when I got to a point where I was able to just finally look at it myself and and I had to admit it to myself first. And
Right.
and the first time I talked to someone about it was when I was a missionary in Chile to my mission president. And then after him, I talked to my family. And just little by little, I started like telling people who were close to me, my friends. But at the same time, I was like, well, because I came out as gay first to my family. But then I was
Hmm.
like, well, am I gay? Like, I'm like, maybe I'm not, because I still have kind of the hots for some girls. Like, I don't understand what I am.
Yeah.
Um, and now, like, I'm just at the point where, like, I don't know exactly. I just say like I'm on a spectrum of bisexual.
Yeah.
Probably, to be honest, probably leaning more towards guys, but I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's just, I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
But um, the more, I guess, leading up to even just posting publicly to everybody on my social media, it's not something I really wanted to do. It was really uncomfortable to be like, ugh, this is something I've always tried to keep to myself. But the more I was realizing like how important it is to be honest with yourself, and I didn't know how to do that.
Hmm.
And having the support of other people, I was like, who else is out there who needs to who needs a chance to, who needs to have permission to be compassionate to themselves, who needs a
Oh,
chance, who needs just someone to give them permission to say, hey, it's okay to be accepting and compassionate towards you, who's been hard on themselves like the way that I have, and who probably like tried all their life just like I have to try and change the way they felt, to change who they're attracted. I mean, like I didn't want to be attracted to guys. You know, I was trying everything I could to not be, and I was, you know, because I thought it was a bad, horrible thing, and I was like, there's something wrong with me, and I'm like literally praying and fasting, trying to get rid of these
Oh my gosh.
feelings.
Yeah.
And it finally got to a point this year as a 30-year-old, you know, I was trying to make a relationship work with an awesome gal, and it just wasn't going well. It was spiraling down, and I was just like, God, please, if you are there and if you hear me, and if you really do have a plan for me, like, please take this flaw away from me. Please, I just don't want to, if you are really there, I don't want to be a way that is not pleasing to you. And it finally, like, I was having a faith crisis like a few months ago, and when this was all going down, and I finally heard him again, and it was like it reminded me of how soothing and how peaceful it is to feel the voice and the love of God. Like when he speaks, he's not shaming you and stuff, but he was just so direct and clear, and he said, David, you need to stop asking me that.
Wow.
And I was just like, what? And he's like, you keep saying like to take this flaw away from you. He's like, when I don't look at this as a flaw, like
Wow.
I intentionally created you as you are, and you need to understand that, and you need to have more, that word, that you need to have more compassion towards yourself, and give yourself a chance to see you the way that I do. He's like, I don't see it the same way as you were seeing it, and the way you think everyone else is, and in churches and stuff, like, and
Yeah.
you need to take a moment to see more clearly. And I was just like, uh okay. I'm like, really? I'm like, that is not what I'm like, but that's not what I thought you would think of this situation. From what I understand growing up and what I always heard in church culture, like that's
Mm.
not what I thought God would think of this.
Mm.
And and he and he said, well, David, perhaps you need to make what you think are mistakes then. And I thought that was really interesting the
Oh.
way he worded that.
And this was all through prayer. Like one night?
Yeah, well, this was after a lot of times. I like
Yeah.
prayed for like a long time, and I was just like, "Why am I praying?" Like I didn't feel anything. It was like as if God didn't exist anymore for me. I was like, "Why am I still praying?" But I just felt something say, "Just
Mm.
keep going anyway, even though you don't feel anything." It felt like God wasn't even there anymore. Like I was like, am I just believing something that I just believed all my life just because it
You
felt
know,
good and people told me to, and I'm just
mm.
is this just something that's controlling the way I think and my mind, and I really was in a faith crisis, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
And but I still was praying. I don't know why. I mean, I do now looking back, but at the time I was like, why the heck am I doing this? There's probably nothing even hearing me right now. And and it got to a point, but that night it was so clear he was there, and it was such a contrast to what I had been feeling for the month and a half before that straight,
Mm.
just complete emptiness, complete darkness.
That's so beautiful.
But yeah,
Makes
anyway,
me
Yeah,
sorry, now
brother.
emotional
I'm
to
going over
hear.
10.
It makes me emotional to hear you like share that story. And sorry, I'll let Derek talk because I heard Derek trying to
Yeah,
say
and I'm
something.
No,
talking
no,
like a
no, brother.
motor right now, so.
No, brother.
No,
That was beautiful, man. And I loved hearing just your honesty, and when you talk about your faith crisis, in the sense that I just feel like, growing up, in the church, and you hear all these things, right? You hear how to be, and you hear all these lessons, and you hear these people talk, and you know, and it really just boils down to, and it comes down to your personal relationship, your journey. And I really believe that. I think you just embodied that so beautifully just now, where there's like this programming of like what we think we're supposed to do, or what
yeah,
we have been told what we're supposed to be, or how we're supposed to behave. And it's like this programming. And then I love that you you and I really employ people to just go inward and really listen and feel what is right to you. And talking about from a religious standpoint, I'm not overly religious myself personally. However, you know, I just realized that we're all leading. We all want love. We're all searching, and we're all our path is to love. It's almost like I was in Jerusalem, Israel, and in the Garden of Gethsemane, and I was looking out over the Holy Land, and I just had this sort of epiphany of like all these like spokes on a wheel leading to the center of something. That's kind of how Jerusalem looks, with all the different religions all in the same very small space. And I realized, because we were all kind of sort of brought up believing like this church is true. I know this church is true. This is the one true, that type of language. And that for me personally, it didn't like sit well with me because I didn't feel like, well, wait, does that mean that everybody else is wrong? And in that moment, when I'm sitting in the Garden of Gethsemane looking out, I realized it's almost like Finding Dory. When they set out all the
Mm.
seashells going in different directions, and they're just wanting their child to come home. And they're setting out all these different paths, and they're setting out all these different trails for her to come home. And I'm like, well, if there is a God, and if there's it's all-knowing being, wouldn't there be multiple ways to find love and to find this being and this spiritual or this omnipresent being? And so I look at different religions, and I just say, hey, if it's leading you to love, if this faith or this relationship, then by all means, you know what I mean? And I love that. I love that so much. And so I just love brother, how you found you just found that voice. And it's really hard to love yourself when you're not being yourself. And
Amen.
I'm proud of you, brother.
Right
Thank you.
up. Absolutely. Like, I love your story so much because as you shared it, I thought, wow, you had a question and you wondered and you had doubts. And instead of like just being like, well, there's a crack in this, so I'm going to run away and I'm just going to shatter the whole thing, you leaned in instead of leaning away. And, you know, personally, I feel like in the last year, like I've had just some questions arise of things and really starting to be like kind of a similar thing in my own way of just like, have I just believed this because this is what I've been taught? Like, and really wrestling with my own faith. And here myself, I feel like I'm a little bit of a Mormon poster child as well. And
Yeah.
thinking to myself, kind of similarly as you, is like, I didn't ask for this. And I am just a person who's trying my best to even know if this is true. And it was really
Mhm.
interesting. I decided kind of similarly, instead of realizing that there was some cracks in my faith, instead of shattering the whole thing, I thought, well, I got to lean in and look closer at these cracks and see if my faith can still hold up with these. And I talked to one of my friends who's just one of the most like faith oriented spiritual people I know. And as I like kind of had the vulnerability to express to this friend, like, I'm struggling a little bit with my faith and I have some doubts. And she just said, Lindsey, don't we all? Like, we all do. We all wonder. And I just think that I remember growing up hearing that, kind of a thought in the church was you can't cherry pick in the gospel. You can't say, I'll take this, I'll take a little bit of that, and I won't take that. And I've kind of come to believe from my own personal testimony, I think that absolutely you can. No one can ever, it's never anybody else's place to say what is right or wrong for someone else. And that's only you and your relationship with God that comes from those personal moments of prayer, like you shared, David, that let you know what is good for you. Because just like you said, Derek, I truly believe there are many ways that lead to happiness and God and love. And I think that if we take judgment out of the equation, which sadly I feel like our religion and the culture that we all, were raised in, sadly is very tied to judgment. And if you take that out of the equation, then it really just becomes an individual personal relationship with God that really is nobody else's business to judge but you. And that's when we'll lose shame. And that's when like true self acceptance will come.
Yeah. I I'm I yeah, I love all that.
Yeah, yeah.
I had like a whole thing and I was like, yeah, I love it. Like it's beautiful.
Well, I'm curious, have you guys felt judged in your in your faith or in your spirituality, especially because I do think a lot of people look and think of us as like, oh, like they were once Mormon or they are Mormon. Like, have you felt judged in this way?
It's funny from a Mormon aspect. Usually it's more of just like people are just wildly curious, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of especially I lived in I moved to London when I was 12 years old by myself, and going from Utah to London, which was this microcosm of the world, where you have every single culture you could possibly think of crammed into a city, every different type of religion, beliefs, and ethnicities and diversity, all just crammed in the city. So I was kind of exposed to, I was very much like they're like Mormon, what's that, and
Yeah, right.
it was more of just curiosity. In fact, people automatically were like, "Wow, you're gonna have so many wives, and you're so lucky." Um,
Oh my
and then I
gosh.
asked my dad, I was like, "Yo, is that true? Can we do that?" And he's like, "No, no, no, no." But yeah. So for me, it was I didn't ever felt like judgment when I was younger about it. It was more just curiosity. Um, but yeah,
Mhm.
I love how curious, and I love how your use of the word curiosity, Derek. I think that's such a great word, especially with acceptance, because I guess I always looked at it as like acceptance is like openness, being open. But I love the word curiosity because it means that you're willing to try and look at something different, and with that, with questions, but like an openness to find more understanding and more answers to those questions. So
well,
I think
it's like
curiosity is a great word.
it's like you said, Lindsay. It's like curiosity in a physical sense is like leaning in, right? You're leaning
Mhm.
into it because you're like, hmm. It's
Mm.
almost like that. Let me just lean into this and let me see more.
I just had an interesting thought. I hope I can put it into words, but we've talked about spirituality, we've talked about shame, we've talked about religion and all these things and judgment. And so I'm going to try to string together these thoughts that I have. But if it came to me that if you are judging someone, then in a sense you're shaming them and saying that are not that they are not as good as what you think they should be, or they're not living the way they should be. So you're shaming someone. But the only reason you would shame another person's choices is if you feel shame in your own. And shame is the feeling of being unworthy of love. And so if you're shaming somebody else, that means you feel shame. So doesn't that directly go against the entire point of spirituality and religion, which is the thought that we are all worthy of love because we're all children of God, no matter what?
Yeah, and I think
I don't know
that
if that I don't know if that
no,
makes sense.
I no, it
Yeah.
absolutely no, I absolutely did. I think that just to put it simply as well, if you're if you love yourself, right? If you love who you are, you're only gonna give love,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're only gonna give love, and if there's parts of you that and to be honest, when you judge somebody, there's this false sense of self-righteousness,
Right.
right? Because true it's not true, right? It's false. It's a false sense. um because if you look at looking at somebody else or yourself, and you're judging somebody, it's I don't know. I think it's obvious how you feel. I think that when you walk away
Right.
and you're talking about somebody or you're gossiping about somebody, you never walk away feeling like, oh, I feel so wonderful about myself. Like
Right.
you carry this tension in your body, and it's yeah, yeah. But I think again, shaming others, judging others is a huge problem, especially now, especially with social media and all these things. And you know, and by the way, going from acceptance as well, I'm gonna kind of reverse it a little bit. I was I was bullied severely when I was a kid. And I just did like a funny little skit with my friend Jackson.
I saw it, and I actually wanted to ask you about that. So
Yeah.
please continue.
Yeah, just joking. And by the way, Brad Everhart, he's not a real person. He's not real. But it was more of just like a symbolic thing of like, you know, um, the kid that like grew up or whatever. I don't know. But for me personally, it is true that I was bullied severely when I was a kid. Beaten up and bloody noses, and went to 6 different
Oh,
schools and the whole thing.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and when I look back at those those guys in my neighborhood. And by the way, P.S. Some of the guys, they would tie me in a tree, hung me up by my ankles up in a tree, put a gun to my head, spat on me,
Oh my
and then
goodness, man.
those kids were blessing the sacrament the next day.
mm,
And so I was like, wait, what's going on here? But as I've gotten older and I look back at those moments, I have so much like compassion, and I have so much love for these these young kids. I mean, they're men now, of course, but like, they're young boys, because you're thinking to yourself, okay, what was going on, with
right.
them, where they felt like they needed to, have that power over this young, scrawny little kid. And there's an acceptance there, at least for me, where I don't carry this sort of hate or resentment. It's just an acceptance of like, you know, that happened, but also acceptance that it was also then. And now in this present moment, right now, in this exact moment, the only thing that exists is this exact moment. Like right now, like me, I'm sitting at a chair, I'm breathing the oxygen I just took breath with, I'm at this table. That is the only thing that is real, and is this exact moment. And those things that have happened to us in the past, to accept that those are the past, and that if we look in a rearview mirror while we're driving, we're going to crash, and we can't look at the past. The past doesn't equal our future. um, and to accept that. It doesn't mean for things to be okay. And there's lots of different situations where you know um, you know people need their reckoning, I suppose you could say. But quite often those things will happen on their own. You don't need to necessarily um, seek that out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think there's also an acceptance for I'm going to use the word enemies, but not. I don't just mean like your enemies. I just mean that people that are in your life that you might carry attention, you carry a weight, you carry a space in your body, and there's an acceptance there that will allow you to release that and to let go of that and stop carrying that with you.
Yeah, that could be for people, or it could also be for experiences or
Yes.
situations or loss or like whatever. Like there's so many ways to have acceptance in life, especially when you're looking at like past. And so that's really beautiful, and it really is like such a heavy burden. And you know, acceptance can be such a heavy thing because it's something that we crave from other people, and but sometimes the real antidote for self-acceptance is you have to stop searching for the acceptance of other people, because you're going to like really work on accepting yourself, and that's where belonging comes in. And so it's such a heavy thing to like search for the acceptance of others in the present and like try to get acceptance for the past. But you're so right that the true acceptance comes from just the moment and yourself. And
Yeah.
I have a thought. Why do you guys think, or do you think that self-acceptance is important for creativity?
Oh boy. Yeah, man. I mean, yeah. I mean, now we're talking about the creativity part. Then that's always a tough one, right? I'm sure you guys can all relate, of course, because you write something or you create something and you're just like, this is trash.
Yeah.
um, but I also feel like that momentum. What I've realized is that accepting, even if you think it's trash, but accepting it and continue to build and continue to go forward with it. Because I feel like with all the bad things you might create, there's always going to be a diamond that comes from it. And
hmm
just accepting and understanding that and believing and trusting that is the case, trusting in it. And I think
Right.
there's also that trust in
And
yourself.
also accepting that sometimes you have bad days. Like sometimes in the creative process, like not everybody has a home run every day when they're writing or choreographing. And I think even the acceptance of like that you're human and that you're allowed to have bad days, I think that is really important too. And just not beating yourself up. And I've kind of found that accepting myself as a person and accepting myself as a creator, they actually kind of go hand in hand. And it's almost really hard to compartmentalize your life and say, well, I'm going to be really hard on myself as a person, but I'm going to be really kind to my art. It's like, unless I'm in a good place with myself in so many ways, I'm not going to be in a good place with myself as a performer or as a writer or, and so I think it all kind of in so many ways, like the same way you have to accept yourself in order to truly accept others. I think it all just starts with like being okay with who you are and, the journey it's taken you to get there and being forgiving to your past and yourself and all of it.
Absolutely.
Can I say something? Just as a creator, actually, like you have to be okay with disappointment and brokenness, because as creators and artists, or however we are expressing that art and creative process, a lot of that, some of the most beautiful work that comes from creators is from brokenness. It's from a very vulnerable place where you're exposing and accepting that, I'm broken, I am down, I am sad, I am lost, and you just let it out. You express that. And it seriously, some of the most beautiful dances and songs and art pieces come from that broken place. And I think it's just accepting that you are human, that you are going to face disappointment, you're going to feel down, you're not going to have answers. And just by revealing that vulnerable brokenness within you, I feel like it is essential to creating, because if you always wrote from just like everything's great, everything's fine and dandy, and I'm happy and I have all the solutions, it just, you lose so much depth in the creative process.
Absolutely. I love everything you guys have said today. I feel like I've just learned so much from both of you. You both are so wise, by the way.
As are
I
you,
I have
Lindsey.
such wise friends. I'm so happy. But it was so good to get to like just connect with both of you. It's been too long since I've seen you both.
Yes.
Um, and before we wrap up though, I want to just ask you guys really quickly. Maybe first we'll start with Derek. What's in the works for you? What are you working on? Where are you performing next? Like, tell us what is happening and exciting in Derek's world.
Yes. Well, currently I am getting ready for my Las Vegas residency at the Venetian Hotel.
Which I
Hey.
am so excited for.
Yeah.
I have already been talking to several friends about a road trip to Vegas to see it.
Dude, I
So,
want to take a
Yes.
road trip to see this too,
Yeah.
man.
It's gonna be fun, and I have the most incredible dancers and amazing band, and I'm just really, really excited about it. I'll be judging Dancing with the Stars at the same
No
time.
way.
wow.
So
Oh my
No
so
gosh.
way.
I'll be going back and forth. I'll be doing
Oh,
judging on Mondays, and then I'll be doing 5 shows a week at the Venetian.
oh
And you
my
can
gosh.
go get your tickets,
I
Ticketmaster, the
will.
whole
Hey.
thing. But it's gonna be fun. I'm really looking forward to it, because I was originally supposed to do it last year, but it got canceled off for obvious reasons. But we're
Yeah.
back, and it's gonna be amazing. I've just been going through all the costumes and
Oh,
just adding more rhinestones, more rhinestones,
always
more
more
sparkle.
rhinestones. Well, for anyone listening, I just have to tell you, I've seen Derek's show at least twice. I want to say 3 times, and it's phenomenal. Phenomenal every time. And I swear you just get better with every show I've ever seen. Do you have Charity dancing in your show?
Yes, I have
I'm obsessed with her.
She's ridiculous. And
She's so good.
Charity, Audrey, Alexis. Actually, oh, and I have and of course Haley, my my beautiful
Oh, of
girl.
course. Oh my
She's
gosh.
gonna be dancing with us, which is amazing. I'm so
So
excited about.
cool.
But I also have a new dancer. His name's Diego, and if you he won World of Dance the last season with
Oh,
his
yes.
two
Oh,
girls.
yes. So
He
good.
is he's crazy. Like, go look him up on Instagram and stuff. he's only 18 years old, but this dude, he does
Oh my
things
gosh.
Wow.
I've never seen before. So I'm very, very excited to have him part of the family. So it's gonna be awesome.
Well,
Very
congratulations
cool.
on that. I just think that is so well deserved, and like
I want to
just
see
so
the
makes
show.
so much sense having you in Vegas with a residency. So yeah,
Thank
David,
you.
let's go to the
I've
show.
never seen a show, so I need to see this.
Yes,
You
I need to
have
and
catch
to.
up with Lindsay's number of
well,
seeing Derek.
the good thing is I'm gonna leave a space in the show, so when friends like you guys show up, I could be like, "Hey, Lindsay, come on up," or "David, come on up
Oh,
here,"
amazing. Just
and we'll do an
cameos.
impromptu performance. Yeah, it'll be fun.
Oh, that's
Hey,
so cool.
I'd be
Oh,
down. Just don't make
amazing.
me dance. Uh,
No,
but
make him
I'll
dance.
sing
Make him
some.
dance.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, and so David, what's coming up next for you?
Next for me, well, so I did just release like a single like
Wait, two
last month.
singles, right?
Yeah, it was one song, but I couldn't make up my mind on which one I liked. So I released two versions of the song, and I did two
Oh,
videos. So the two
Oh,
videos
I
will be
love it.
coming out. I did try some choreography, but don't expect anything grandiose. But it was fun. Wanted to get out of my comfort zone, and then I also have a children's book coming out in October,
oh,
and
Wow.
it's after a song. One of it's lyrics of a song I wrote called "My Little Prayer," and just basically, I prayer has been a big part of my life, and just to kind of help kids know how to have a conversation, personal relationship with their
That's
Heavenly
awesome.
Father.
it's
And
beautiful.
It's
yeah,
beautiful. I love
thank
that.
you,
I love that.
I'm
thank
gonna
you.
That is
get it for
awesome.
my nieces and one for myself as well because I love children's books.
Me too. I love
By the way,
children's
because
books too.
you know what I
I'm
love
so
about that
excited.
too is I think that we've always been taught like what to learn, but not necessarily how to learn. And I think I love
Mm.
that you are giving a modality and a way to like of how to connect and you know what I mean. Not just I love that. That's awesome. It's beautiful.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm trying to. It's like to help people know, like you don't always get what you ask for. Like sometimes you're going to be disappointed with how things turn out, and that's okay. Like you can still find joy and be happy when things go. God shows like, hey, I've got something else for you instead. That's definitely been how it's been for
Yeah,
me lately. So
It's awesome.
yeah, I'm excited for it.
I love that. And I love how open you were to receive that answer. You know, you can only
Mm.
find those answers if you're like truly searching. And so that's so
I'm still
beautiful.
learning. I'm still
Yeah.
learning too,
Mm-hmm.
but I am open. I'm open to
Love it.
learning.
Oh man. Well, guys, again, thank you so much. Let's all
Lindsay,
meet in
thanks
Vegas
for
for Derek's show.
hey, yeah.
um,
Yes.
and yes, I'll be talking to you guys soon. And for everyone listening, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us today. And if you enjoyed this conversation, I'm gonna keep doing these Facebook pages occasionally. So keep checking on my socials, and I hope to see you in another live audio room soon. All right.
Thanks,
Love you,
Take
Lindsay.
care,
Lens.
everybody. Love
Thanks, Derek.
you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, y'all.